Hey, what's going on there, guys? I'm back here today with another deck tech for you. So today we're taking a look at a modern deck, and it's blue-red Paradise Cantrips. So this is a combo deck in modern that plays off of Blistercoil Weird and Paradise Mantle, where when we have the Paradise Mantle equipped to Blistercoil Weird, he is effectively going to allow us to just go and cycle through our deck and make him really huge. The way that happens is that every time we cast an instant or a sorcery, Blistercoil Weird gets a +1/+1 until the end of the turn buff, and we get to untap him. So we have a huge amount of cantrips in our deck, cantrips being spells that have some sort of small but yet still significant effect, but also allow themselves to be replaced by a draw spell. So they do something small, and then we can draw a card, which effectively replaces that slot that we just used out of our hand. So each time we play those spells, we're able to untap the Blistercoil Weird, then the Blistercoil Weird can tap for another 1 mana of any color based off of the effect that Paradise Mantle adds on to him. So effectively we can make him really huge, and we can just stomp over our opponents by playing a ton of 1-drop spells. And we can also play off of Grapeshot as well, or a combination of Blistercoil Weird and Grapeshot. So it's kind of like a cantrip style storm deck that plays off of Blistercoil Weird and Paradise Mantle. So before we dissect this deck and take a look at all the cards that I'm running here, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave them down in the comments below, and I'll take them into consideration for future deck techs. And check out the playlists in the description below, where I have all the previous decks that I've covered on the channel. So let's take a look at what all we have in this deck here. So the first card is Blistercoil Weird, which I pretty much explained, but he's a 1/1 for hybrid blue or red, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn and untap him. So the more spells we end up casting, the bigger he gets. And with Paradise Mantle is 0 mana to actually put it onto the battlefield, but 1 mana to equip, and the equipped creature has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So the Blistercoil Weird taps for 1 mana. We spend that 1 mana to cast an instant or sorcery for 1 mana, and we untap him, and we just kind of repeat that chain there. So Grapeshot is a 3-up for us. This is one of the easy ways to win in accordance with the Blistercoil Weird. If we can't get the Blistercoil Weird up to like a 20/20, if we just kind of reach our max with what we're doing, if we can't get him up to being a 20/20 and swing in on turn 2 like that, or turn 3, turn 3 is probably more consistent, but turn 2 happens a whole lot. Grapeshot can just kind of help us out there. It can kind of match whatever we still need, or we can just go for Grapeshot, and we can have Grapeshot just deal the 20 damage off of the storm. So it's kind of like in a accordance with the Blistercoil Weird. That's our means of being able to match whatever damage we still need to deal. For our cantrips that we have here, the first one is Gitaxian Probe, and a lot of these cantrips are in a playset. But a playset of Gitaxian Probe, look at target player's hand and draw a card for 1 Phyrexian blue. So we can either pay the 2 life and get free mana off of the Blistercoil Weird, or we can pay the mana for him and not take the life and just draw a card. We get to take a look at what we have in our opponent's hand, and we can kind of assess if our opponent has any hate or anything that they can do to stop our combo from happening. But ultimately, Gitaxian Probe is another really easy way where the Blistercoil Weird's ability is put onto the stack that allows him to be untapped. We can tap him for mana and then allow that to resolve and add 1 extra mana to our mana pool, which can allow us to play like different other things like Manamorphose or anything like that. So the Gitaxian Probe is ultimately a pretty nice way to just take a look at what our opponent has. I have a playset of Cerulean Wisps, so it's 1 blue, and target creature becomes blue until the end of the turn. Untap that creature and draw a card. So it's a nice other way of being able to just add some more mana to our mana pool, because the Wisps untaps the Blistercoil Weird, and us just casting it untaps him, so we can tap him and let the effects resolve, and then we just net 1 mana off of the Wisps. So it's just another one that nets us a little bit of mana without having to pay life, as opposed to Gitaxian Probe where we do. I have a playset of Thoughtscour, so we have target player put the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her grave, and we draw a card. So this can either be good or bad for us. It just kind of depends. If we already have a Grapeshot in hand and we have the intent of playing it later on, we don't have to worry about using Thoughtscour on ourselves and then being able to fuel our Visions of Beyond. But if we kind of are in the realm where we're kind of worrying about milling out our own Grapeshots, then we'll just go and use it on our opponent. But ultimately, we just draw a card off of it. We have Peak, which is pretty much the same thing as Gitaxian Probe. Look at target player's hand and draw a card, but we don't have the option of paying Phyrexian mana, paying 2 life instead of paying the 1 blue for it. Then we have our playset of Visions of Beyond, draw a card, and if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, draw 3 cards instead. So if we're able to get into like the later stage of our combo when we're just kind of getting the chain going and we have a huge graveyard full of instants and sorceries, we may be able to bank off of it and get 3 cards instead of just 1. But like I said, Thoughtscour is another one of those cards that helps us fuel that. We also have fetch lands as well, so it just kind of is a nice way to interact with a deck where we can just draw 1 card, that's perfectly fine, but if we can draw 3, it's even better for us in digging and getting more things. I have a playset of Serum Visions, so draw a card and then scry too. So being able to scry is really awesome for us. Being able to look at the top 2 cards of our library, put any number of them onto the bottom of our library, and the rest on top in any order. So we can kind of arrange things. If we see any lands that we don't need, we can just put them onto the bottom and not have to worry about them. Our land base is only 10 lands, so we don't really have to worry about a huge amount of lands popping up, but even still, if any of them run into that scry, we can just rearrange them. I have a playset of Sleight of Hand, so look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other onto the bottom of your library. Pretty unimpressive, it's just a basic draw spell, but it's still pretty good for us nonetheless. I have 3 Quicken, which Quicken's probably the most unimpressive card here. You can use it to cast Grapeshot on your opponent's turn if you really want to do that, but basically we don't have the intent on doing that. But it's an instant for 1 blue, and the next sorcery you would play this turn can be played anytime you could play an instant and draw a card. So really the biggest implication that we have there is being able to cast Grapeshot during our opponent's turn, but it's basically just another draw card for 1 blue spell that we have as a 3 of, and that's the only reason why it's a 3 of as opposed to a 4 of, is just because it's a little bit more unimpressive than everything else that we have here. I have a playset of Faithless Looting, so this is going to help us to draw a decent bit off of it. We get to draw 2 cards, but we have to discard 2 cards, so if we have any lands in our hand that we don't need or anything like that, we can discard those pretty easily. It also has a flashback, which we don't really necessarily get to use a whole lot, just because it's expensive at 3 mana, but if we're really desperate and we've been able to net mana off of like Gitaxian Probe, Wisps and stuff like that, then the Faithless Looting flashback might come into perspective, but ultimately the flashback is like a worst case scenario, we have to use it, but best case scenario, we're just casting it for 1 red, discarding anything that we don't need like lands out of our hand and just getting things going for us. And then we have a playset of Manamorphose as the last spell here, so instant speed, 1 generic, and 1 hybrid red or green, so add 2 mana of any combination of colors to your mana pool and draw a card, which is totally awesome for us. So it lets us net mana as well off of Blistercoil Weird, which is awesome, and it's ultimately going to allow us to play things like Grapeshot, which when we're at the point where we're already playing Manamorphose, we're already able to cast Grapeshot, but ultimately it just kind of speeds things up for us, and if we need red mana off of Faithless Looting or something, it helps us out with that. If we're not able to kind of interact with our weird as much, but usually we don't have too many issues with that. Mainly everything's going to be interacting the way we want it to, and mana is never really that big of an issue unless we don't hit land drops and we have to mulligan from the start to get like that perfect opening hand for us. But with 1 land, we're pretty much able to operate as as effectively as we would like to. 2 lands is probably perfect for us. We don't have to worry about anything at all. But our land base is 10 lands. We have a playset of Scalding Tarn, which is going to either let us search for our Singleton Steam Vents, which is going to allow us to play Faithless Looting, or we can search for any of our 5 islands that we have in here. So 10 lands total. So that's our main board here. Now let's jump over and take a look at what we have in our sideboard. So for our sideboard here, I have a playset of Mizzium Skin to start it off. It's 1 blue at an instant speed, and target creature we control gets +0/+1 and gains hexproof until the end of the turn. So this is the easiest way to get around stuff like Lightning Bolt, Path to Exile, and Dismember. And those are nuisance cards. We don't want our opponent being able to just get rid of our guy before we even get anything going and have to dig for another one or hope that we draw one in the next upcoming turns. So the Mizzium Skin is our kind of way to save him from being able to get like exiled or destroyed or anything like that. I have a playset of Echoing Truth, and this is mainly for the Chalice of the Void. Any deck that is running Chalice of the Void and is able to side it in game 2, that's a pretty huge setback for us, just because if they play Chalice of the Void for 1, X equaling 1, that pretty much shuts down our deck. We can't really do anything. So Echoing Truth comes in game 3 if they side it in game 2. And we are able to just bounce that back. If we're at like the point where we play 3 lands and we're able to bounce back their Chalice of the Void with Echoing Truth, then if we're able to go off on that turn and just beat them down before they can actually play the Chalice of the Void, that's pretty much as perfect as it gets. But Echoing Truth is just our means of getting around Chalice of the Void. Also, if our opponent has like a lot of black creatures, I'll consider siding it in over Aphotic Wisps. So with this Wisps, it's a instant speed for 1 black, and target creature becomes black and gains fear until the end of the turn. So with fear, we are going to be able to just sneak around and still be able to deal damage to our opponent off of the Blistercoil Weird without having our opponent have their creatures and be able to block us because of that fear. But it's another one of those cantrips. It gives our creature fear, and we get to draw a card off of it, which is not bad at all. And then the last card that I have is Inquisition of Kozilek. So it's a sorcery speed card for 1 black, 3 of, and target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it with converted mana cost 3 or less. That player discards that card. So this is more so for anything that our opponent tries to counter. So if we don't have to worry about our opponent using targeted removal, we might have to worry about our opponent countering us and not letting us keep things going and keep on drawing cards or anything like that. So the Inquisition lets us see what our opponent has. We do also have Peek and Gitaxian Probe to see what our opponent has, but if there's anything of value that we can take out of there, then the Inquisition of Kozilek is going to let us take care of that. So that is the sideboard that we have here, and that is our blue-red Paradise Cantrips deck. It's really fun, and if you guys take out the fetches out of it, if you take out the playset of Scalding Tarn and then just kind of modify things, not run Faithless Looting, run something else because we don't really have the support for red. If you just kind of fix things around, it's a really amazing budget deck for Modern and something that is really fun to play. It's pretty consistent. There are some games where you just kind of get screwed out just because of bad draws and stuff like that, but that really happens with a whole lot of decks, and it's still pretty consistent. It's really, really fun. And the entire deck list is down below where you guys can use that as a reference. Also, be sure to check out the playlist in the description where I have all the previous decks that I've covered on the channel. And until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.